This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. Happy Father's Day. We are glad to have you with us as always. It was a tragic and traumatic week in Washington, D.C. as a man armed with a rifle opened fire on Republican members at a baseball practice. Joining me to discuss is Arkansas 2nd District Congressman French Hill. Not to make light of this very serious situation, but happy Father's Day to you too. So.
And to you, and I think because of the outcome and the quick actions of the Capitol Police, there are a few other happy Father's Days today too.
Tell me why you think what happened. You've had some time to process it.
Yeah. Well, on the security aspect of it, both Democrats and Republicans are out practicing for several months early in the morning, and they do not have security when they're out there doing it. It's treated as like a personal activity. So if Steve Scalise's two-person detail, since he's a member of House leadership, had not been there, it could have been far worse, a massacre.
Mm-hmm. What do you think was at the root of that, though? I mean, was this just a deranged individual who had mental problems, or do you think there was something more widespread and culpable?
You know, I don't think we know the true story about what motivated him. We've seen on the news and comments that he was a Trump hater and very concerned, and I think had been a supporter perhaps of the Sanders candidacy. So clearly politically motivated, but you know, you don't know behind that. What is his mental health? That to me is a key issue.
Yeah. And you mentioned that this is kind of treated as, you know, a part-time activity out there. They're not at the U.S. Capitol where there is a big security perimeter. I see it when you guys travel the district. We've talked about this after the Gabby Gifford shooting several years ago. Do congressional officials, do you guys need more police protection in the district and when you're not at the state capitol or at the U.S. Capitol?
Well, generally, I think that when people are working in their district, they need to be aware and use good judgment about the circumstances they're in, and if there's necessary for local law enforcement to perhaps be at an event or something that might be helpful. But as a general issue, we're out in the public every day. We're doing our work. We're proud of doing our work and being with the people. In this instance, though, where there's a group of members and it's publicly known that they're going to be at this place at this time, I think the Capitol Police should reassess. Any assemblage of members of Congress, even off the Capitol grounds, should receive protection.
You guys put out a public schedule, though. As a matter of fact, we published the public schedule of members of Congress as well as the governor. The governor has a security detail with him at all times. You guys don't when you're in the district. Does that not alarm you?
Well, I don't think it alarms me. I think that we need to be aware of our surroundings and think through that, and where local law enforcement might be helpful in a particular instance, think about it.
One of the congressmen that was interviewed probably about a day after the shooting occurred said that we've had about a day and a half of bipartisanship in Washington as a result of this, because it did bring members together in a way that we haven't seen since maybe the Gifford shooting or 9/11. What's it going to take for us to extend that beyond a day and a half in terms of bipartisanship?
Well, first, let me thank Paul Ryan and Nancy Pelosi for setting that tone and saying an attack on one is an attack on all of us in Congress. And I think people genuinely feel that way. And as I remind people every time I'm at home, Republicans and Democrats are working in Congress together on every one of these topics. We may come at them from different points of view, but we are trying to reach consensus on behalf of the American people. So what can we do better? To me, and you've heard me, I think we've talked about it before, I believe in Kennedy's inauguration mantra of civility is not a sign of weakness. And I think people need to watch their tone. In Congress, elected officials, the President of the United States, people on social media, people need to be more respectful of each other and their views. And I think that will help.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and talk a bunch of policy issues. You guys have been busy in Congress prior to this week. We're with Congressman French Hill. I'm Roby Brock, and this is Talk Business and Politics. We're back right after this. And welcome back to the program. I'm Roby Brock. We're joined by 2nd District Congressman French Hill. Let's talk policy. On Friday afternoon, the president made a stand, reversed some of the opening of relations with Cuba that President Obama had started a couple of years ago. What's your take on what he did? Do you support this reversal of policy?
I think what he was doing was fine-tuning. He's left our embassy open. He's left the American relationship with Cuba improving. But I think he wanted to get at one of the hearts that was maybe the heart of a weakness in the Obama opening, which was doing direct business with the military and the Castro regime directly. How do we encourage, beyond the small business enterprises, Americans doing business with non-Castro military regimes? And I think that's at the heart of what the president did, because he left in travel options and buying rum and buying cigars and doing business. And we want to get our agricultural products in there. And of course, Congressman Crawford and Senator Bozeman have led that work on how can we navigate more freedom in Cuba, more opportunities for the people, less money directly to Castro, but get an opening for commercial business like our ag products.
But this has been a failed policy of the U.S. for more than 50 years before there was an attempt to change it. Now we seem to be going back to some aspect of that. Congressman Crawford, Senator Bozeman both opposed this reversal of policy by President Trump. How is this going to be good for Arkansas agriculture when we're really kind of closing up the avenues for opportunity?
Well, the key that we're trying to do is not only get private financing for agricultural products into Cuba, but also get a recipient and a distributor of those ag products that's not the Castro regime. That would be sort of an ideal.
How's that going to happen?
I think by putting pressure on them to encourage them to offer alternative mechanisms on who are the business people in Cuba.
And if they don't do that, maybe they go do business with North Korea or Iran or China.
Well, it'd be more
or
like Brazil and Vietnam in the case of ag products. And there you're dealing with, obviously, government subsidies for rice from Brazil.
But that may be a viable option for them.
Well, it's where they get it now. Mm-hmm. So I think this is going to be continued work. I appreciate John Bozeman and Rick's leadership on how to get a policy that we can get through the Congress and to promote our ag products.
Let's get on to the banking issue. I know you're a banker at heart still. You know, even though you're in Congress, you've been working on a policy called the Financial Choice Act. It changes some capital ratio requirements for banks. I don't want to get too wonky on this because people will get lost, but tell me why and how this change is going to benefit smaller banks without changing the policy toward banks that are too big to fail. Why is this going to be good for the smaller banks, not for the bigger banks?
Good point. So 6 years after, in July, it'll be 7 years since Dodd-Frank was passed, which had a regulatory set of rules to try to correct the abuses that we saw back in 2008 and 2009. This bill, the Financial Choice Act, tries to fine-tune those, keep the good things about Dodd-Frank, but reform things that we don't think are working and that particularly hurt consumers and smaller banks. We have an off-ramp for community banks that if you keep a 10% Tier 1 leverage ratio, which is very high, to be well capitalized, the government says 5% is well capitalized in Tier 1 leverage. That's how much capital you have for your assets. That allows a community bank to have a lighter touch in their regulatory policy while maintaining those rules, those harsh, more difficult, more complex rules for the big, too big to fail banks. So I think it's a good approach to right-sizing bank regulation.
How many banks in Arkansas do you think are in that 5% range that can get to 10 that'll benefit from this?
Well, I would say that among the 100 or so banks here in Arkansas, probably 80% already meet the 10% Tier 1 leverage test. So I think many community banks will find this an attractive way to better serve their customers and have not the complexity that Dodd-Frank was created for, basically for the big Wall Street banks.
You've been working on some Veterans Administration issues too. There have been everything from drug thefts to financial mismanagement, obviously some patient data breaches and problems in that respect. It seems like there's been a whack-a-mole approach to kind of addressing a problem. Is it time to look more holistically and maybe even more radically at doing something about the VA system? It seems to be Band-Aids aren't working.
Right. Well, I think Congress's approach has been to contribute more money. They've almost more than doubled the budget and added 100,000 people in the last decade. So they've really just applied more financial resources, and the results have not been demonstrably better in the way you described. So this VA Accountability Act that the House and Senate have passed and we've sent to President Trump to sign allows management to fire bad actors and streamline their appeals process and hold them account for ethical breaches that you outlined or mismanagement. But I'm with you. if you look at that healthcare system, the VA healthcare system, versus a privately run health distribution system, let's look at benchmarking, productivity, and I hope Dr. Shulkin, who's the new VA secretary, I think the only Trump cabinet official to get close to 100% vote in the Senate, will bring that private sector management approach to streamlining the VA and making it more accountable. And certainly that's been a key interest of mine since I got elected to Congress, and it will continue.
Before, last time we talked, I think you were voting for the health care plan, but we didn't have the CBO score yet. That has come out. It's had some negativity attached to it. Do you still support your vote on the American Health Care Act?
I do support my vote in the House for the plan, because a vote to not support it would be to vote for the status quo of a failing system where we're losing healthcare providers. We're seeing soaring premiums. We're seeing soaring deductibles for families, and people dropping out of the individual market, which was the whole intent of the Affordable Care Act. I'm hoping the Senate will now bring their creativity to the process, and will actually have a joint product that we can all support and improve health care for our families.
Your vote was just to keep the process going more than it was to support a particular policy?
Absolutely, it was to keep the process going. It was to take the best ideas we could get through the U.S. House of Representatives and move it to the Senate to see what their ideas were, which are different, led by Lamar Alexander, former governor of Tennessee, senator in Tennessee, and see if we can improve the failings in the Affordable Care Act.
It's all secret right now, what's going on in the Senate.
Yes, not even, nor you nor I know the secrets
What
of the
makes
Senate.
you think it's going to be palatable to Republicans in the House when it comes back?
Don't know till we'll see it. But I know that the
Is
status...
that good policy, Congressman?
No, but I'm talking about when we see the Senate bill come back to us for our consideration, we'll have to vote again on the Senate changes to the bill and then send it to the President. But their creativity and their views are as important as the views in the House. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with. And let's see if we can get a consensus on how to improve this failing healthcare law.
All right, Congressman Frenchill, thanks for your time.
You bet.
Appreciate
Brother, good to be with you.
All right, you too. We're back with more right after this.